let's start with some sitting and maybe some Shakyamuni Buddha mantra. So you should feel that you're with Dharma brothers and sisters, and there could even be a sense of great happiness and rejoicing that one's able to be here, because it's quite rare to engage in spiritual practice, some kind of investigation based on perhaps on an authentic path. That's quite rare, which is coming down unbroken from the time of Lord Buddha. So just get a sense of your posture and sense of being mentally oriented towards the teachings, towards the Dharma, which is like a medicine for our suffering. So we're all like sick people, the Buddha said. Dharma is the medicine. The person sharing the Dharma is like a doctor, and we should aspire to take the medicine and also aspire that the Dharma lasts for a very long time in this world for the benefit of beings who are confused and upset and caught up in destructive emotions. You should really not take this Dharma for granted. It is only here due to various causes and conditions, and other causes and conditions can certainly make the Dharma disappear on this planet. So we can aspire that it lasts for a very long time, and that our efforts here today, however humble, help that Dharma to survive in this world. So let's remember the great kindness of Shakyamuni Buddha, who, after great striving for many eons, attained full enlightenment. Not only did he attain full enlightenment after so much effort, sacrifice, patience, and so forth, even to the extent of giving up his body again and again, he then taught the Dharma. He taught us, he gave that medicine. And he almost, in a sense, almost didn't do that because, as many of us know, he felt the Dharma was so deep and difficult to understand. He almost didn't teach, but felt it would have been better for him to just go away into the forest in solitude. But fortunately he taught until his death. So remembering the kindness of Shakyamuni Buddha, born as a prince, gave up that life to dedicate it to others, to his and to future generations. So you can recite his mantra 7 times. This is a practice that our founder, kind Lama Yeshe, used to encourage. Even before a meeting or something like that, we would recite Shakyamuni Buddha mantra with Lama Yeshe or whoever was there.
Taya Mahamunaye Soha Tayataoy Mene Mene Mahamunaye Soha.
So we should all be very happy, especially all of us, especially the Indian students, I would say, that we are helping to rediscover and our authentic parampara, our authentic tradition, which bestowed by the kind great beings of the past, especially Lord Buddha. Parampara, if you remember, it's something which is a tradition, a lineage based on authentic realization of a realized person, of a holy person, and then passed down in an unbroken fashion to us today. It has to have a kind of a divine, in the sense of a very authentic spiritual realization at the beginning, which is what Lord Buddha had, and then he passed that on to us via a string of illustrious teachers for the last 2,600 years. And so we're still benefiting from this parampara, thanks to the Tibetans who kept it alive after it was destroyed in this country. It's important to talk about parampara and so forth because such things are very hard to find in this day and age. In fact, the first teaching I ever received from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, way back in England, was on a teaching that's very important to reflect on again and again, especially in terms of wishing for the Dharma to last a long time. And that is the teaching on the 5 degenerations. According to the Tibetan tradition, the Buddhist tradition, it's there in the Hindu teachings in their own way. We are living in a time of spiritual darkness, in some sense, of great degeneration. Often called the 5 dregs. Dregs are what are left behind when you finish the good, nourishing part of anything. What is left at the bottom are the dregs. Of course, if you're a very poor person, then some poor people like also to take the dregs, whether it's something in a dustbin or, as my Scottish grandfather used to say, as a young journalist in Scotland, he would see the very, very poor people going to the tables in the drinking houses and taking the whatever's left at the bottom of mugs or beer mugs or whatever, and collecting that, putting it in a bottle so they could drink it or sell it or whatever. I'm trying to remember the Scottish word. It was called plonk, not plonk, but there was a word my grandfather used. Anyway, it was dregs. We wouldn't want to drink it, what people have left behind at the bottom of their glass. Anyway, we're living in a time of the 5 dregs, 5 degenerations. It's like the goodness almost has been sucked out of this solar system or planet in some way, spiritually speaking, but also, of course, physically speaking, we can see that too now. Environmentally speaking, we're living at a time which, if you study it, it becomes very, very painful even to study it. Authentic studies, that is, not studies funded by the Monsanto or the certain governments. We need to study what is actually happening to this planet. Anyway, spiritually, degenerate times. Let me read what a very great good Lama who used to teach in Dharamsala has said, Geshe Sonam Rinchen. So the first of these dregs or degenerations is the degeneration of time, which means it's a time characterized by conflict, strife, and so forth, all of these kind of problems. Then it's also a time where there are degenerate living beings, obviously. So this refers to the fact that there are very few people now who can be found with very few disturbing emotions, who are not overwhelmed by anxiety, suffering of jealousy, pride, anger, attachment, tremendous longing, desire, and so forth. It's very hard to find such beings now. Those who did have very few disturbing emotions, we could say they've already been liberated. They were already liberated by the Buddhas of the past. We're not in that category. We are kind of stubborn. We're stubborn beings. We may be very proud of ourselves because, maybe a monk or nun or studied Dharma for 40 years, but still our mind, we know, is very stubborn to authentic Dharma. So we are a degenerate living being. Oneself is a degenerate living being. We're difficult to deal with. So Lama Geshe Rinchen says, if we look around us, look at ourselves, we definitely are likely to fit in this category. Degenerate lifespan is the third of the degenerations. There are times in the past and there will be times in the future when it's said sentient beings have very, very long lifespans. You find this in other religions too. References to this in the Bible and so forth. So even though we might think, we have longer lifespan than people in the Middle Ages or the last century, even before penicillin and so forth, still 100 years, 120 years is nothing compared to what beings enjoyed in the past and what they will again enjoy in the future at some point. It is said, I think, when Maitreya comes in a full-fledged fashion, when Buddha Maitreya comes, then also beings will have very long lifespans at that time. So that is the third. Also the fact that nowadays there's so many ways to die, so many kinds of accidents and natural disasters, so it's very easy to die young. Then degenerate, this is just different categorization. Some are overlapping, obviously. The fourth degeneration is the degeneration in the disturbing emotions, the three poisons especially. Now we can see how tremendous prevalence of wrong views in the world, prevalence of tremendous hatred, tremendous desire and attachment, of an incredibly powerful nature. Especially, of course, it's easier to see the violence that is often in the papers and on television, but also the desire, the clinging, the grasping, that kind of mind is so powerful nowadays. So disturbing emotions are manifesting in a very, very powerful way at this time in you could say in history or in terms of epoch, yug, yeah. Then the final degeneration is degeneration of the views. So view here means the correct view. The correct view would be understanding reality, at least understanding to some extent cause and effect, dependent arising to some degree. Of course, if we can, then to have full-fledged understanding of ultimate truth, emptiness. But if we look around, what kind of views are people having? All sorts of extraordinary views and wrong views, and views of, even very, very perverted kind of spiritual views, satanic views, often connected with harming oneself and others, and thinking that that is a path to liberation or to heaven. All sorts of crazy views here, but also just that general carelessness towards cause and effect, karma, not caring how we behave with other people, not being considerate of other people, not caring for others, acting in a very rough and loose, careless way, unmindful of the fact that what we do has effects, has consequences for ourselves and others. Sometimes when you read literature, you get a feeling for this, and I think one line just a few words that once stuck out in one novel by Scott Fitzgerald, who was a famous American author who wrote The Great Gatsby, which they made into a film. Did anyone see the film, Great Gatsby? Yeah. You must have seen it. This is our film while I'm here. Anyone? Nobody else saw Great Gatsby? Yeah, 2, 3, 4 people, yeah. So if you see that, and in the novel also, there's this one line where he's describing the life of couple of the people in the novel, so kind of you, welcome, says, they're careless people. They were careless people. It's like they didn't care for others. They didn't care how they behaved, It was somehow in the context of the book, and such a good author, it really was very powerful. Careless people. Don't care. Don't care for others. Don't really care for themselves properly because their behavior is just out of control, And we all know people like that, including oneself, One knows oneself, but often we know it clearer in other people when we see other people misbehave or be careless. Careless, not just in the sense of not being able to pour a cup of tea properly without spilling. That is also a very important part, also, you could say, and that is given a lot of attention to, isn't it? In some traditions, like the Zen tradition, everything has to be very precise and perfect, which is great, but not just carelessness in that sense. Carelessness in not caring. Doesn't matter what I do, what I think, what I say. Doesn't matter if I upset people. In fact, I don't even know I'm upsetting people. That level of carelessness we have nowadays. We don't know the effect of our actions on others. We don't care. We're not aware of it. We're not aware that it is something we should be aware of. That's how degenerate it is, in many cases. Things are falling apart. So this kind of 5 degenerations. Then the Lama says that these different kinds of degeneration are increasing, becoming more widespread. Fewer and fewer people find happiness or create the causes which can give rise to it. Instead, troubles and difficulties arising from external and internal causes abound. Few people think or do anything that's really positive, and most are governed by disturbing emotions. People's attitudes are perverse. They rejoice when others suffer, think it serves them right. Such thoughts prevent them from having any kind of genuine altruism. And when they see others prosper or do good in any way, they are tormented by envy, which prevents them from rejoicing at others' happiness. So we can see that. But then the Lama says, it isn't surprising when we see ordinary people behaving like this. But he says what's really sad nowadays is to see so-called spiritual people behaving in the same way, competitively, envious of others who have more followers or richer or, whatever, bigger viharas, monasteries, temples, whatever. We see a lot of that. And that's truly sad when so-called practitioners are behaving in the same way, but it's a part of the times, you could say, also. It's a very degenerate era, and due to karma, collective karma ripening at this time, you could say, partly. Many, many factors. Then it just becomes worse and worse as things interact with each other. The worse environment you have, the more poverty, then the more it just feeds back on itself, and you have more and more problems. So now we're living at that kind of time. So now is the time when it's even more important, you see, for those who can, to see that it's a very powerful period where we have to act with tremendous skill, courage, and have some ability to transform these difficult circumstances into something positive. So many examples of medicines which are made from what are initially poisonous substances like arsenic or mercury or other ingredients, substances which would kill us if we had them in their pure form. But through a medicinal process, they can be transformed into something life-giving and useful for human beings. And an example given a lot also in the teachings is a peacock, which is said to be able to digest poisonous things. And at least for the male peacock, I guess, it helps to transform, make the colors in its big tail even more bright, which is what is said. The peacock has that ability to transform poison into something that just adds richness to its tail feathers. So we need a technique in these degenerate times to be able to work with our minds, to continue on our spiritual practice without being dragged into this swamp quagmire of perverted views, perverted, degenerate emotions, shorter lifespan, more dangerous times, and full of wrong views. Where it's so easy. I mean, you see sometimes people who are just caught up in otherwise decent people, good human beings. I mean, in one sense, of course, all human beings are good, but you see very decent people who are just dragged down by very perverted kind of ideas, ideologies, views. There's many examples of this. I don't want to waste time with too many, but I mean, one I used to think about. There are so many, but I saw photographs of Osama bin Laden when he was a young man, teenager maybe, on holiday in Paris with his family. Just a youngster, just a young man enjoying. He didn't have a beard and long hair then or anything. Just an ordinary kid enjoying himself in Paris with the family. Then you could see after what happened to someone like him, who was basically intelligent, didn't grow up in poverty or anything. A very rich family, of course. Had some fun. Why did he turn into what he became? Well, you would have to say that the power of hatred also, but the power of very, very strong wrong views about certain things. And especially also the hatred, the anger, which he developed towards America especially, the US. So you see someone being changed by their ideology, and then just getting caught up in that ideology, so that whenever they open their mouth somehow, just that comes out. The humanity becomes less and less apparent, the human quality becomes less apparent, and you see a person dominated by their ideology, by their view, by their little way of looking at the world. Does this make sense? Please interrupt if it's not making sense. I don't want to, especially since I'm being videoed or something. How can a camera video? A small camera like that?
It's an action camera, actually.
Anyway, so I'm still old-fashioned enough not to understand these things so well. For us, a camera is a camera. It goes click, and then you take out the reel and take it to Mahatma's in corner place and take it to a dark room. Nowadays, it's all different. Excuse me. One gets up in the morning with fear of getting cold, and then by mid-morning one realizes that fear is not working. You have to take off the garments that you put on in a state of uncertainty and fear, and that is just, excuse me, revealing socks in public. Okay. Now, so with this state of affairs, how are we going to turn it around? How do we turn our situation around? If we are someone who is becoming aware of this and is concerned for one's own mind, one's development, and concerned for others. If we're intelligent, if our eyes are open, and we're lucky enough to see, not to be always looking at disinformation or the wrong kind of media. If our eyes are open and we're actually aware of what's happening in the world, it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing, very saddening. So what are we going to do? It's obvious we have to protect our own mind from despair, from getting upset, from getting angry, from thinking, oh, well, who cares? I can't do anything about this. It's already too far gone. Look, the teachings already are saying it's the time of the 5 degenerations, the dregs. So what can I do as one human being? This is what we might think. Somebody's... What's that noise? No? Okay. But I heard something. Oh God, goodness, you see, the person doesn't even know it's their own. Why is it making a noise? It's on mute. Very strange. So first thing we have to do is to develop some sense of when we're in difficult situation in life, or then we look for friends, right? We look for people to help. So here Lord Buddha said, your best friend, the person you should use to help you, first of all, is your own mind. Of course, you need teachings, you need a spiritual community, you need Lord Buddha's teachings to be there, somebody to impart them, all that you need, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, of course, but your best friend in helping you to make use of these treasures is your own mind. So we have to make friends with our own mind. How do we make friends with our own mind? We have to understand. We have to understand somebody whom we want to be our friend, how they work, how we can, develop the positive potential in the mind and be aware of the tendencies which are distracting us and leading us into the wrong direction. So obviously it's very important first to develop a sense of calm. Excuse me. A sense of calm mind. Yeah? Calm mind. Focus mind. A mind that's a little bit centered. Because our age is one in which we are being almost torn apart by distractions, by conflicting, things competing for our attention. Which, remember, were not there 100, 200 years ago, let alone in the time of Lord Buddha. They didn't have all these things competing for our mental attention. So it's even more important now, isn't it, to be able to bring the mind to some kind of peaceful place through what we call shamatha practice. Shamatha, peaceful abiding, calm abiding, tranquil abiding. That mind, the mind has that quality of being able to tranquilly abide, not necessarily on one point. We're not saying it has to be focused, just on one thing, but it has that ability to quieten down, to be still, to be calm, peaceful, relatively content and happy. It has that quality, but we're not aware of it so much because it's almost as though we insist on stirring up the mind all the time with these powerful destructive emotions and all the distractions. We very rarely, at least in our waking hours, have that chance to develop a very still, calm, clear, happy mind. So that's one thing we have to practice. So that's one of the three fundamental trainings, isn't it, of the Buddhist path. Whoever you are, as a Buddhist, based on some kind of ethical way of life, we try to develop some sort of stability in the mind, some sort of focus. If we're not doing that, then we're not actually fulfilling our practice. We're not fulfilling our vows in certain cases. Some of the vows relating to Mahayana practice, which is the practice of great compassion and so forth, that's very clear there that if you're not taking the trouble to develop some kind of calm and stability in your mind, then that's a fault. You have to remedy that. Realizing that to stop being a careless person, to start being someone who cares for oneself and others, we have to learn how to pay attention and calm this monkey mind. This monkey mind, this mind which behaves like a wild elephant. We have to be able to do that. So if we're not practicing any sort of mental stabilization, thinking, oh, well, that's a basic practice, I don't need to do that, I'm some kind of special person who believes in action, I believe in helping others, benefiting them, I don't need to sit and focus my mind, that's boring and selfish. Well, if we think this way, we might be very wrong. Because if we not have some basic stability and calm and clarity in our mind, then I think what we can do is create a lot of confusion, chaos, and easily also get upset and thrown off balance because we just don't have a basic kind of balance in our mind. We are totally at the mercy of whatever is arising in that moment. We don't have it's like riding a horse without really having a sense of knowing how to sit properly in the saddle.